Hey everyone, I'm Community Manager Darian, and we're back with our second edition of our Clash of Clans question and answer session. And joining me today are two members from the Forum Mod team.
Hey, I'm Lach.
And I'm Smolson.
So in spite of what conspiracy theorists have believed, we did invite Lach back to ask some of these difficult questions. And I think, what was it? They said that we had to kick you off the camera last time for asking too many tough questions. So
there were lots of theories, yeah.
We actually pulled him out of the basement this time. And Smolson, you're here to make sure he's in check?
Yep, don't worry guys, I'll make sure this one gets on. I'm here to make sure Lach doesn't get too unruly.
So why don't we get started with our first questions, yeah?
Cool, let's do it.
So what do we got for our first question?
Well, Darian, my first question is kind of revolving around clans. One of the best things about clans is that it brings everyone together to work on a common goal. One of the two biggest things is trying to get to level 5, so you get the first troop level increase, and then obviously level 10. But after that, there's not much for people to do. So what should clans be working towards, or is there something else that you're gonna maybe give us something to do after we've reached level 10?
So we're gonna touch on that very question later on in the discussion, and it's like, what are we working on next? I do kind of want to give you kind of a hint of what's to come. Okay. So I did want viewers to get something out of this, and something that they haven't heard before. As far as what do we currently view for clan goals, well, once you've reached clan level 10, we didn't want to keep adding more and more clan bonuses. Ultimately, because what that does, it makes it for lower level clans. I think you and I had that discussion, where it makes it lower level clans very difficult to survive when people want to flock to nothing but high level clans for those rewards. So if we keep adding more rewards, you're going to end up with this very distorted view of where clans should go when they want to start off the game. Because if those goals are increasingly more and more difficult to reach, it's going to be harder for newer clans to survive. So we're kind of looking at how do we want to tweak this? How do we want to change, and how do we want to incentivize how clans progress? And what can we do to incentivize lower level clans to progress to higher level clans without having to abandon a lower level clan and join a higher level clan? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We've got some features in development that should at least incentivize clans to remain where they're at and really push their clan along, which we'll touch on later on.
Okay.
But it is something that is when I talked about earlier how we're laying down a foundation for a lot of things, and we'll get into that verbiage later on, being in a social, or being able to take advantage and play in the social aspect of this game is something that we really want to nurture and grow. I mean, it's Clash of Clans, and clans being the operative word here, that we want there to be a very social aspect of the game and not just clan wars, not just trophy pushing, not just farming. Well, then what purpose does a clan serve?
Exactly. So you spend a lot of time, I think, in the beginning is everyone's trying to climb towards the top of the mountain, but once we reach there, it kind of falls off, and you kind of feel the life sometimes kind of fall out of the clan. Like once you finally did it, we reached level 10. Now we can all do these. We get the double troop increase to fill all these clan CCs, but then we work towards that to get there, and then we don't really get.
Yeah, it's exciting for a week or so, and then it's like, well, what next?
Right, and that's kind of. Putting the constantly changing clan badges was kind of a first step, and we just kind of need to fill in the blanks that go from there.
Okay.
Right. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Like we've got all these different tiers now added to it. What do we fill that with? And it's not just going to be more clan perks, because again, as we discussed earlier, that's not necessarily the right answer, but it is in the works, and we'll touch on that more later on.
Okay.
Awesome. So my next question, Darian, is why add the builder base to the game? Why not just add PvP into the main base?
Multiple reasons. The first one is a lot of the builder base is built on player suggestions, gem mine, the clock tower, head-to-head combat. What this allowed us to do is implement a lot of these suggestions without radically overhauling the entire game from the ground up. Now, there are a lot of functionalities in the game that do need some improvement, but in order to implement every one of the suggestions would have required the game to be redesigned from the ground up, and including head-to-head PvP. So, and one of the big questions, and this goes back to the whole clouding issue, is why don't we add head-to-head combat for Legends and Up League? And to kind of reiterate something that we've been kind of stating is, one, it would radically fundamentally change how combat works in the game. The game economics of head-to-head combat and the trophy climbing and the way the system matches players we'd have to create 2 different systems within the main village. On top of that, not everybody wants to do it. Or what about the people going from all the way from beginning league who want to do PvP and can't? And let's face it, majority of the player base is not going to be able to climb to that high of a league. That's why it's such an exclusive league. It's for the hardcore competitive players who really want to climb high and prove that they're the best. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but there is quite a large number of Legend League players now.
Absolutely.
We're talking over 100,000 people.
Absolutely.
Every season.
Would head-to-head fix a lot of the clouding issues? I think it would.
Yeah.
But is that solution? I mean, you're looking at one very specific set of solutions for a very specific problem without really seeing how it affects the rest of the game. Right. So there is something that needs to be done for the clouding. And that's separate from why we implemented the builder base. To kind of reel it back here, we put the builder base in because we wanted to create a new fun aspect of the game, something that was divergent from what you do on your day-to-day basis without wiping out everybody's effort. So we wanted to put some head-to-head stuff. We wanted to create kind of like a, not necessarily a testing ground, but try out new technologies and new ideas in the game without wiping out 5 years of progress that everybody's been working towards.
Right. So are there any features from the builder base that you're planning to bring over to the main base?
Not a lot at the moment. We want to make sure that they retain distinct identities, apart from the gear-ups. There may be some not intentional crossover. I know that sounds vague, but there, for example, like you got the clan events. So there may be a builder-based event, or we just had one. So that's about the limit of the crossover, or extent of the crossover we have planned at the moment.
Right.
I think that some people saw the PvP come to the builder base and think like, man, this would be really cool if I could be able to do this with my main base, kind of one-off against somebody and just have it be a pure battle of who can have the best attack against somebody's base. And I think that a lot of that desire is not just for fixing the clouds, but it'd just be cool to be able to do that on your main village, something that you've spent so much time working on for so long, and you have a feature that you can't even really use for it.
Right. And part of the system is the way Clash of Clans was built from the ground up. For example, the big issue with clouding is the shields. Like you've got more people online trying to attack than there are people offline. So it would require a complete overhaul of that system. How do you create a system from the base bottom leagues all the way to the very top? That you have it purely based on what it's on now. And you look at builder base, it is purely matched on trophies. When you get, I believe it's once you get past, I think it's 1,500 trophies, it goes purely by trophy rank. So there you go. It's official. It is purely on trophy rank.
Yeah,
it is. Okay. That's why when you climb too high, it's a self-limiting system.
Yeah.
It's intended to self-police, because if you climb too high, you're going to be going against builder bases that are either more powerful or players that are more skilled. And so you start losing it until you get down to the level that you're supposed to be at. Until you either upgrade more troops and increase your player skill. And the main village was not designed around that. Right. It's not designed around that kind of skill competition. And the trophy system is not designed around that same thing. And I think there are other ways that we can improve the system without having to radically overhaul it just yet.
So can you comfortably say PvP is ruled out for the main base?
It's not ruled out, but it's not exactly on the table either.
Yeah.
It is something that we are, and I apologize to viewers out there for saying this, it is something we're looking at. But we don't see it as the solution to the issue.
Just sort of reeling it back there to the gear-ups. Is there any other gear-ups we might see coming to the builder base?
The only one that we don't have implemented in the game right now is the multi-mortar, which I don't think we have one planned just yet. I believe it just says coming soon in the game.
Yeah.
That's the only one that I know of at the moment. I don't think we have any.
Yeah. We're not going to see like Infernos turning into roasters or anything like that.
Hey. Let me write that down.
Never say never. Yeah.
Darian, what would you say is the Clash team's vision for the end game of Clash of Clans?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Like any game that is perpetual and ongoing, you're going to get a variety of answers on that. For example, if you look at an MMO or any kind of MMORPG, do endgame players only purely focus on raiding? Do they focus on PvP? Do they focus on just grinding levels or building alts? So, that's kind of a very rough analogy. But with Clash of Clans, do we look at, should endgame just be clan wars? Should endgame just be trophy pushing or farming? Or is there or builder base? So I think it's all of the above. Like, we want people to push the boundaries of all of those things because every person is going to have a different want and need from the game. I'm very involved in clan wars. Some of my friends are not. They like just trophy pushing. Some of them just like farming. Some of them just like doing builder base. So if we declare that the end game is only clan war, where does that leave everybody else? It feels them left out.
Right.
So you're not going to get a definitive answer on this is absolutely what the end game goal of the game is. Because a game like this doesn't have a finish line. There's no I beat the game moment. There's no, I saved the princess or the princess is in another castle.
Roll the credits.
Yeah, there isn't one of that. There's no such end game feature to a game like this. But how do we constantly provide meaningful content for people to constantly want to perpetuate through the game is the important question here. Now, we thought about, did we want to just add more town hall levels? Well, eventually, probably. But realize that's not the solution right now. There's a lot more stuff we can do to build endgame. The distance between Town Hall 11 and 10 is getting disparagingly longer and wider.
Right.
So how do we kind of balance that out a bit while still providing Town Hall 11 players something to spend currency on?
Yeah.
What do we do about, the clan war matchmaking? What do we do about, farming and trophy pushing in the clouds? These are all endgame related issues.
Because right now, it makes it hard. I think especially a lot of the people out there, you hear this a lot on the forums, is you find people that are maxed out and they're in a level 12 or 14 clan. So Clan Wars isn't their end game, and their base is maxed, so farming isn't their end game, and they can't trophy push because they have to spend hours in the clouds, and so they're coming here wondering, what do you want me to do?
Right. And that is a dilemma but being able to provide end-game content and to give people incentive to constantly, pick up their mobile device and constantly play. That's obviously a desirable goal for us.
You can understand that frustration, though. I think, as a lot of people are saying, and then, they're almost banging their heads against the wall, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, here's builder base. Like, that's not what I wanted, though. What I want is something else for me to do on what I just spent, 5 years playing.
I guess a better way to say it preventing players from playing is not good for us.
Right.
Like, our goal is we want players to be able to play as much as they want. And if there's a system in place that's preventing them from playing, that's obviously bad. So that's what we're trying to fix. But these things take time. It's not going to be an overnight fix. And we can touch upon, I guess, one of the big, conspiracy, I don't want to say conspiracy, but one of the big complaints we hear about is, why don't we hire more people? Why don't we have a bigger team? And team size is not the issue that we have. Our biggest challenge always is time. Time is the most valuable resource that we constantly run out of. And a good analogy that I like to use is, if you have a pregnant woman and it takes 9 months to deliver a baby, if you get 9 pregnant women, you don't get a baby in 1 month.
Okay.
It doesn't speed up the process. It just takes 9 months, regardless. And the same thing goes for developing any kind of software or computer game or software application. When you've got a server engineer who's knee-deep in code, the last thing you often want is more people added to it, adding complexity to that code. So again, the best thing you can do is manage time. You can add 100 people to the team, doesn't mean it's going to get there faster. Especially when you have a very specific aspect of the game that you need to focus on.
Right.
And also, we want to make sure that we're focusing on one aspect of the game at a time because we don't want to start 9 different parts of it. And so if we have to constantly shift focus on each one, that means all are going to take that much longer to get to. If we focus on this one first, we'll get there. Then we focus on this one, and then we'll get there. Then we focus on this one, and we'll complete that one.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit then on what the challenges are, the differences between Clash, because there's a lot of game comparison, I think, at times. So why is it that Clash of Clans things seem to take longer, and then players compare that to, they see Clash Royale getting more frequent updates, and so what they're thinking is, Clash Royale gets it, Boom Beach gets it, or Heyday gets it, but why not us? Why does it take longer for Clash of Clans? You know, we're analyzing and comparing always to some of the other games, and you see some of those other ones. So why does it make it difficult, I guess, to do that in Clash of Clans, where some of them might take longer than it would, say, in Clash Royale?
Because they're very different games. Clash Royale is a type of game that is designed for that kind of ongoing variety. Where Clash of Clans is much more attacking a base type strategy type of game. So you need to make sure that if you're constantly adding more and more variables into the mix, it's going to make it infinitely more complex. Whereas with Clash Royale, you have a very limited number of units that can be on the screen at the same time because you're limited by those certain resources. Where Clash of Clans, you're not. You just basically build your army up and you throw them out there. So you're not limited by how many resources you can spend at that single moment, and that creates a much more stable environment. That doesn't mean we can't add more troops or add more heroes or add more variety, but we have to be very, very cautious when we do that, especially when we see the meta game start to stagnate around a certain type of attack style or a certain type of even defense style. If we see it start to metastasize around one type of format, then yeah, we need to do some balancing.
Right.
But it's not a game that lends towards easily adding that kind of frequency very often. It's just not, the games are too, I guess it's very apples and oranges kind of comparison between Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, even though they share the same universe or same universe of characters. You know, one is designed for that kind of rapid ongoing variety, constantly new things all the time, where Clash of Clans is not designed around that kind of mindset.
So Darian, last time you talked about matchmaking, you mentioned that you go off gut feeling. Can you elaborate on what gut feeling is?
Yeah, my gut feels really good. In all seriousness, I think I do owe the viewers some clarification on that. That I didn't want it to make it sound like that. No, we purely go off of gut feeling and we don't look at any data. We actually do look at a lot of these data on how matchmaking goes. We also look at the forums and look at player feedback. So what I meant by what we do at gut feeling is when we match, when we look at the matchmaking, does some of this feel right? And that has to be a judgment call based on the data that we're looking at. We can't just look at, here's a data threshold, and if we don't meet it, it's bad. We have to look at, there has to be some wiggle room on the threshold, and where do we feel that's a good point? So that is what I meant by we go on gut feeling. We have to make a judgment call on what feels right. Is it perfect? Is the matchmaking system perfect? No. We are making improvements, and actually this morning I saw a post stating, I thought this matchmaking improvement was supposed to be the end-all, fix-all, that we promised to make it perfect. And I've been seeing that a lot, and I wanted to clarify that we never promised a silver bullet that was going to fix every single issue. We never said that this was something that was going to end all engineering for all eternity. That was never what we were delivering. We constantly said that we're giving iterative adjustments to constantly tweak, because that's how this system has to work. We need to see, we need to see how data-driven results are derived from how we make these changes. We make a change. We look at these data. Do we feel that was the right direction? That's a gut feeling decision.
But you're not ruling out making drastic changes all at once as well?
We're avoiding that for now.
Right.
We want to do iterative adjustments, little bit incremental changes, make some adjustments to weights here. And we're looking at, how do we want to weight heroes? Do we want to increase the weight of heroes, specifically the Warden? Which is, I don't want to make it sound like we've been avoiding saying that. We are looking at that. We are looking at how offense is affecting engineering.
That is it's a definitive Town Hall 11 troop. So
it is, and then when you look at engineering, and to clarify again, we don't see it as cheating, but we do see it as gaming the system and taking advantage of loopholes. And if people are taking advantage of loopholes in the system to gain an unfair advantage, our goal as a game developer, we want to make sure we close as many of those loopholes as possible to provide as fair of a balanced match as possible.
Okay. I feel the community would destroy me if I didn't ask. Would you dare put it in percentages of what is gut feeling, what is community feedback, and what is data?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Of how much you use of each to determine the changes you make?
I'd say probably 70 to 80% data. And with the decisions used on, or the gut feeling comes from the decisions we make based on that data.
Right.
And I'd say maybe community feedback is a good maybe 10 to 15% of that as well.
Right.
So we do rely on the community for seeing, because we may be seeing data on this, but with millions and millions of players, like we can't go through every single clan match to make sure it was matched perfectly. This is why we have to look at player feedback, because one, it's the ones that feel like they had a mismatch. They're the ones who are going to post like this was a poor match. We need to see that war ID to see what the matchup actually was, and we're finding a lot of the times those mismatches have a lot of times been very visual in nature, but power to power wise, they're a lot more fairly evenly matched than they might think.
How are players supposed to be able to make that determination on their own? A lot of us use the what's in the gold storages method to check, defensive weights and adding up hero levels and then comparing those and using that to say this is fair, this isn't fair. Is that an accurate way to do that? I mean, how are we able to make that assessment of saying, hey, Supercell, this isn't a fair matchup if we don't really have the proper tools to analyze it?
Right, and I understand that. And that's part of the reason why we're not transparent about how the matchmaking system works, is because we want to avoid further potential gaming of that system. Like if we provide, each unit provides this amount of weight and this amount of defensive strength versus offensive strength, that could give those want to game the system greater tools to really, really work the system. So we do it very conservatively. We would like to be more transparent about certain things. And sometimes, that first impression when you see your clan matchup and you see, this number of Town Hall 11s, it can be daunting at first, like, oh, we're up against another engineering clan. That's something we're trying to improve. But as long as that there are these loopholes in that system, it's something that we're constantly striving to improve. It's just going to be an evolutionary process.
Okay, so the next one that we have is, I think, a really popular question.
Uh-oh.
Why can't we use heroes in war while they're upgrading?
Originally, it had to be an option where players chose where to spend their currency on cautiously, and it had to be an upgrade choice. It had to be a conscious choice, like, do I want to go into war, or do I want to upgrade it? Because there are only so many levels that each hero can progress to, that if you sped through it faster, we didn't want people speeding through it. It would feel like it would slow down progression. However, this is a thought process that might be changing, that it is something that we are looking at to allow heroes to be upgraded, allowed to be used. Because if your defensive buildings can be used in war, why can't the heroes? It would be cool. It would make players be able to contribute to clan war much more frequently. And I think that would lead to an increase of the number of clan wars actually happening. And a greater pool of clans to choose against would ultimately help the matchmaking system as well. So I don't know of any definitive plans to make it happen, but it is something that is in discussion.
Okay.
I just don't have an answer right now.
Well, it's because I think, where the demand really comes from, essentially, you have such a large part of the game is clan wars.
Yeah.
And if you have to spend all this time, again, we're kind of trying to find our way to the end, and you're spending so much time. For instance, myself, as a new Town Hall 11, spend so much time trying to focus on getting those hero levels up so you can be good at war, but I'm spending so much time just basically farming them up that I'm not getting the experience or the ability to practice and get the experience of being in wars.
Well, part of the compromise is why we limited the upgrade time for the heroes to 7 days. It was so it didn't have that exponential growth value or growth factor of when it was spent time upgrading. Part
of the solution be, so instead of just, okay, yeah, you guys can all use heroes in war while upgrading, what about decreasing the time that it takes? I have to have my queen down for 7 days. In those 7 days, I might be able to accumulate enough resources that by the time that she's done, then I'm going to put her back down. So I'm continuously out of war. So if the upgrade times were shorter on those hero upgrades, it might be a work around that, maybe?
Well, and this is where community feedback actually comes into play. That we've been seeing those threads pop up on the forums for years now, but it's starting to build up a lot of momentum, and it is something that we've been passing on to the development team on a regular basis. So
let's start a petition. 1,000 signatures?
No.
We've got one already with about 900 pages, I think. So
I think there's already enough headway, and it's something that we would like to see happen. It's something that is constantly in discussion. But again, We don't want to focus on too many of these things at one time, or too many different things at once. We have one solution at a time. I think we have to look at, what are the most important problems with the game first before we start focusing on those things.
What is the most important problem right now?
Clouding issue, matchmaking, and endgame content. Those are the top 3 priorities for the development team.
Okay. I think that's good to include that in.
That's really good. Darian, something we see all the time is players asking, why doesn't the development team share what they're working on in advance and get feedback from the community?
In a nutshell, because there is no agreement on what everybody wants. Everybody has their own distinct wants and needs. On top of that, we're not designing by consensus. What that means is, when we develop a set of features, if we, shared it with the community, like, hey, we want your thoughts on what we're working on, everybody's going to come back with a different answer. You might like it, you might hate it. Who do we listen to? Whose side do we take on this? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and you'll see this even when we posted some of the sneak peeks. The friendly challenge for Builder Base was a feature that so many people have wanted. But how many dissenting opinions did you see? A lot. How many people loving it did you see? A lot. So there is no unified consensus on what even in each individual wants. And when you have a game that runs as long as Clash of Clans or even longer as some other PC games and console games franchises have run, one thing that's a universal truth, that there are going to be some updates that will not positively resonate with every single person. That's just the nature of gaming development. Whenever you have new content, some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. So ultimately, what the development team has to do is we need to focus on making a game that we feel kicks butt.
Right.
Hopefully, it'll resonate with everybody, but the goal is to make sure it resonates with as many people as possible. But in game development, you shouldn't focus on trying to make every single person happy, because you will make no one happy.
It's not necessarily about making people happy as such, though, either. I think going back to friendly challenges, when they were first introduced for the main base, there was no cooldown on creating a base to use it. And that was something that when the community went in an uproar, you guys changed it before the update even came out during the sneak peeks.
Right.
So there's definitely value in sharing with the community as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I absolutely agree. And with the builder base, when that was released, that was meant to be a big surprise.
Right.
Which is why the contents of it were kept under wraps all the way until, apart from the captain's log videos on YouTube, that's why the contents of it were kept all the way until the very end. But I think there can be better ways of managing expectations, and whether increasing or tempering some of the hype that comes from new content. And going forward, I think that's what we're planning on doing with the new content we're working on. Like we want people to be excited about it. We want to show the new stuff we're working on. But I think there's a better way of marketing and showcasing and garnering feedback on, here are some features that we're working on. It's kind of like how, when you show a trailer of a movie, like the trailer doesn't give away the plot, but you see a lot of cool stuff from it. And I think we can do something similar like that with future content as well.
Right. Okay. That sounds good.
What about maybe sometimes, tying back to the community, we thought about maybe just kind of increasing that lead time a little bit, because sometimes a lot of these things happen, you're like sneak peeks, and then all this, panic happens in the community when they see something, and it seems like it might be better to, maybe if you give a little bit more lead to it. I understand you're saying...
About 2 hours?
Yeah. An extra 2 hours. Just an extra 2 hours.
We've been doing, if you noticed when we did the sneak peeks, those sneak peeks came out about half a week before the update dropped. So before, traditionally, we've been always doing announcements, like either the day of or the day before. We're trying to increase that lead time. But part of the nature of game development, especially in mobile gaming development, is that so many things can change until the very last minute. So we can do a better job at tempering those expectations. Like, here's a list of features that we're anticipating, but, changing unit stats or cutting features as we get closer to the deadline because, a certain feature may not get in. And when you're in development, you have such an emotional attachment to so many of these things that it's really tough to cut a feature from the game. Like, for example, if we wanted to make a, 3-headed, 4-legged, 6-armed P.E.K.K.A. that, attack multiple things at once.
Confirmed.
Yeah. And if we really liked that unit, but we just couldn't make it happen, it would have been hard to say, this is what we're working on, oh, but we have to cut it. And especially if both of you loved that idea, how are you going to feel that if we have to cut that feature?
Does sound pretty good.
Yeah, you get emotionally tied to it, and maybe the people who are developing, I can see there's some emotional attachment. But generally speaking, if there's just give us a little bit more of an opportunity to provide that feedback, because that's what we're all there, I think, to do, is we like the game just as much, or maybe even more sometimes, or at least that's how we perceive it, than you guys might, and we want to make it better too. It's not just about griping how we hate something or how we want it to be easier, but we all, I think, are striving towards the same goal, and it's just like, how can we come together on that a little bit better?
And this is kind of something one of the reasons why I like the forums is that I see players' anger as a positive thing, in that it's showing to me that not their hatred of the game, but how they're frustrated that they want to keep enjoying the game. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It shows their passion.
Right, and I think that can be utilized in a very positive way. So I do think that there are opportunities to really improve on how we showcase new ideas, and giving greater lead time, and in showcasing, here's a list of features, here's a preview of what's to come, and here's a video clip of what to expect. So I think I don't want to give away too much. I don't want to give too much away just yet. Not yet.
But we're continue to try and kind of close that gap maybe between how we can continue to keep everyone involved and make the game as good as we possibly can. So this is another question that we see a lot of the time. Why can't we have more name changes?
So the answer to that is actually not as simple as you think. First, originally, from what I understand, I actually went and talked to the developers before this, that they didn't allow name changes before.
No.
So it was added. Part of the reason is that we want players to have that reputation follow them. Like even if we allowed gemming for name changes, even if we allowed gemming for name changes at an exponential rate, like for, let's say, the first time is 5, then 100, then 1,000 gems, there are going to be some high-spending players who are going to want to change their name and then constantly troll. Like if you kicked, let's say if Lach was trolling your clan, and you kick him out.
Again.
He pays for a name change. He comes back in. How are you going to know it's him?
Player tag.
Right, but should we require players to constantly keep track of every single player tag that they kick in and out of the game?
Need a blacklisting thing for clans then.
That is a good point. But the other part is you have to look at the load that it puts on player support. Like how many thousands of more tickets would generate? I changed my name, I accidentally misspelled it. We already get a lot of player support tickets from players like, I did my one name change, I misspelled something. Can I get it changed again?
And now it turns into, I've paid for a name change and I've messed up.
Yeah. So on top of that, where do we draw the line on how many name changes are possible? Do we just make it a never-ending, gem climb that you can do it as many times as you want? There has to be a finite limit. There has to be a line that we place in the sand that said, all right, this is the number that you're allowed. Because there has to be, we want players to keep their in-game identities. We want it to be their responsibility of this is your in-game reputation, that it has to mean something to other players in the game.
That line's set pretty low, though. We talk about where do we set the line. It's set pretty low. Is there a chance? I know we talked about, what are the priorities of the Clash team, and we think that too. There are top priorities, but there are other people, as you said, again, everyone's got a different opinion. So is there a chance that maybe that line bumps up?
It does. I mean, there is a chance. With Clash of Clans, there's never say never when it comes to looking at different improvements that we source from the community. This is one of them. Mm-hmm. Is it an option that we would like to offer? It's got to be done very carefully. Again, we don't want to make these kind of sweeping changes just purely because everybody wants it. If it's done, we have to look at not just Clash of Clans as a whole, but how it affects not just the community, but also the rest of the infrastructure of the game. And player support is a part of that. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at how would this increase our response time for players who have maybe issues with their account got hacked, or they lost their password, or their device broke and they don't know how to link to another device. So when we get legitimate player issues, if we add more name changes, that's going to take away from the response time of how long it takes to get to these other players. Now, do we want to look at what's an acceptable delay, or do we look at staffing up more support staffing up more support may not be the right direction. So we have to look at it, how does this gradually affect everything? And if there isn't a system in place to limit what these are, we have to look at the long-term scope of like how is this going to affect everything else that's involved with the game.
Okay.
So it's not just a measure of can I just change it? And if we allow one more change, well, can I change it again? Well, if we allow one more change, can I change it again? So how do we draw the line? How do we put limitations on what these are? And if we do add more, what's the incentive to do it? Is monetization the right way of doing it, like adding gems, or making it cost gems? And if so, does that mean only high spenders can change their name? I don't think that's the right way to do that, because that's not fair to someone who might not want to buy gems. Why can't they change their name?
Right.
Especially if someone who's only done free to play. That is a social aspect of the game that they're now going to miss out on. That someone who's willing to spend gems can.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Perfect sense.
Okay, we got time for one more.
Yep.
What do you got?
Recently on the forums, you posted, and I quote, "This is barely the tip of the iceberg of what we've been working on. But in order for it to be built, it has to start somewhere first. What is the rest of the iceberg?"
Underwater? No. So this part of this goes back to, we talked about what the community consensus on and how do we focus on various aspects of the game. The way I phrased that was very intentional, that we're laying down the foundation for other things. We're working on new content that it's going to be a multi-staged release. The first part of it, we're hoping to have out within the next couple months, part of our big winter update. It's going to incorporate adding more functionality to the clans, how clans function, giving more incentives to clans, more collaboration on clan dynamics.
Kind of like Clash Royale.
Not in the same way, but the long-term vision of that could be something along the lines of, clan-type leagues and, multiplayer clan-type encounters, things like that, stuff that, would really add some new dynamic functionality to the game and not just more trophy climbing, not just more clan war type stuff. Hopefully we'll have, we're looking at having some kind of sneak peeks within the next month or so, I'm hoping. I don't want to give away too much, but the way I phrased that was very intentional. And we have been working, and this is all stuff that's largely geared towards the main village. And there may be a little bit of crossover with the builder base, but not in a way that makes people eye roll about, they're adding more builder-based functionality. It's not in that same way. It's just the nature of the content we're doing that there may be some crossover for those who like playing the builder base, but it will not impede on those who like playing main village only.
Okay.
Can you say that this next update is primarily focused on main village?
That's yes. In a nutshell, yes. It's largely focused on the main village, but it's not main village content like adding a new town hall level. This is adding a new dynamic to the game.
Okay.
Or at least a new facet of the game. That it's something that a lot of people have been wanting for a long, long time.
Okay.
God, I really want to say it so badly.
Okay, right. One word. Starts and ends with.
I'm going to give a starts with.
Okay.
Starts with a Q. So guys, thank you for asking some of these questions. I hope the viewers got something out of it. I had a blast, and we kind of had to get Lach out of the basement that we kept him in to keep those conspiracy theories
Great
silent.
to see fresh air.
Yeah, I bet. What about you guys?
No, thanks so much for taking the time. It was really good to learn a little bit about the Clash of Clans team and how they operate, their thoughts on things. It's great to get some answers on questions we've had for a long time.
Yeah. What about you?
Just want to say, I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. Guys, I know there's maybe a couple things that we might have left out, but trust me, we do try and read as much as we possibly can and do our best to represent your thoughts and ideas and all the great things that you post on the forums and try and pass those along to Supercell any opportunity that we get. So
Hopefully we get to the next one.
Exactly.
So,
Absolutely.
And so I was told that Galadon wanted to be in this one, but he couldn't make it, right?
Correct. He had a flight to catch.
Yeah, so for Galadon and Klaus, this one's for you. All right, guys. See you next time.